I'm with the Minister for Planning and Environment under its old title, Bob Duhamel. Just come out of scrutiny, had a long grilling in scrutiny by... What did you make of that process?
Well, I think having been at the other end of the process and been in the chair on other occasions, I think broadly, yeah, they were doing their job. They were fairly fair. I came out of it, I think, relatively unscathed, but I hope that my openness with answering the questions was appreciated.
Of course, Deputy Young, who's new in the States, was asking the question. He was a chief officer at planning for some time. Is that, I mean, it's useful, he had knowledge, but is it useful for the public process to have an ex-chief officer?
Well, I think it possibly is useful, whether or not it's right is something else. But that said, he's got a relevant experience. He comes at the job from a particular direction and experience that he's had in the past. And maybe the only thought that crossed my mind was whether or not his line of questioning was not wide enough, perhaps.
He had a dozen, I think, main categories of questions to ask you, and he certainly filled the time very fully. One of the recurring themes, which listening to it all, was about the fit for purpose aspects. Obviously, the building you have isn't fit for purpose. Mm-hmm. That's something you're going to remedy, or you plan to remedy?
I'd certainly like to, but within all of these job functions, as minister or involved at the top, you can only do things that you're allowed the monies to do. So, although it would be desirable, I think, long term or longer term, to maybe relocate both the functions that are up at Howard Davis Farm with the environment, with the planning department from South Hill, perhaps in town somewhere, so that the public had easier access and we could open up the planning system to more people. I think that remains a long-term aspiration at the moment, and I've just got to bide my time and fight my corner.
You've inherited an island plan. You were talking about master plans which are needed. Are you happy that the island plan as it now is actually fit for purpose? Well,
I think as far as it goes, yes, I am, but certainly a number of the items that are within the island plan have got to be interpreted, and that's the reason that we've got quite a long list of supplementary planning guidance notes that the officers are busying themselves with in order to flesh out to everybody's satisfaction the understanding of those important clauses.
Housing occupied a fair bit of the discussion today. A certain sluggishness on getting H1, H2, H3, whatever the numbers are, implemented, and also the lack of a home buyers scheme, which means that the cheaper end of the market, if there is such a thing in Jersey, can't get really up and going. Is that a satisfactory action of the current aspect of the island plan?
I think it is. I mean, the island plan process itself actually set up the groups. We've got a body of work that has to be undertaken by a specific period of time to an organised timetable. And I think we're moving ahead pretty well to deliver on the things that the states have asked me to deliver on. Specifically, I'm not keen on home buy, never have been. It was a deferred payment system. It doesn't deliver in my books, and I think equally some of the more limited shared equity schemes don't deliver. That's why I've taken it upon my shoulders, so to speak, to kind of push forward with a different initiative on affordable homes, which I'm kind of coining the word truly affordable homes. And I think I can deliver, if I'm allowed to, on state-owned sites, large units with better amenities in town for £200,000. The emphasis tends to be upon the word affordable, but there are 10,000 working adults in Jersey who don't even feature in the housing plan because they don't have housing qualifications. Mm-hmm. And that number has been fairly solid for a very long time. Since the 1960s there's been this 10,000 people. Isn't that where the real housing demand is amongst those 10? They're the greatest need, aren't they? I think they are a need. They're certainly a sector of the population who shouldn't be kind of ignored. And I think equally there must be important changes that are brought about in order to improve the amenities and the spaces of the residential units that are being occupied by these persons. Certainly, over the last couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to look at some rental units, and I think we disgrace ourselves basically in terms of offering very low spec units to people who actually are saying that the island is fortunate to have because they're contributing towards our economic well-being and welfare.
It's a bit ironic that we have a few hundred people who've expressed their housing need because they're allowed to go on the official state's housing list. But that presumably is a very small part of the actual housing need of the island. How do you try to assess what the actual need is? I realise the statistician of the island is coming out with various figures, but I can't quite understand in the island plan how you're actually addressing the housing problem with a view to ending the shortage.
Well, the thing is, the work that's being undertaken by the Housing Department is in producing lists of people who are looking for housing. Right now, that's not necessarily the same. If you're looking for housing and you go onto that list, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that you haven't got a unit that you're living in. And I think this is the key difference. Equally, and if you look at the housing numbers at the moment, I'm being told that around about a third of the 4,500 are paying full rents. So in my thinking, I think we could quite easily, if we had proper affordable units, allow that 1,500 to migrate towards home ownership opportunities, and that would actually leave 1,500 extra units for those living in poorer units to move into.
Assuming that the population doesn't decrease by a huge amount, we're stuck with the 100,000 figure, even if there's no further growth. The 10,000 that I've already referred to without housing quarrels have to be satisfactorily housed one day. When shall we see an island plan which actually plans to build for them?
Well, I think we've got one now. I mean, you know, there's higher standards being called forward for key worker housing, as the UK, in particular in London, did a number of years ago. That's all part and parcel of this move for affordable housing.
You referred quite strongly about the need for master plans, which has been neglected in the past, but the island plans, about the last 3 island plans, have had specific master plan areas for town, urban areas, which have not been dealt with. They've never ever been resourced. Why do you think you can do any different?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think the States have given me the job. I think because this is a particular kind of bee in my bonnet that I've had for a long while. I've had a large body of experience by sitting on previous panels and previous committees for planning. I think I know where I'm going, and it's something that I want to deliver on. I think other previous ministers had different expectations or different areas that they were more interested in. And master planning isn't everybody's cup of tea because it doesn't deliver in the short term. And politically, sometimes that's not really what you want to do if you're wanting to be re-elected. Regeneration
of St Helier and the urban areas was a main platform for many years. I haven't heard the word mentioned a great deal because it was going to be financed by the wondrous schemes on the waterfront, since the waterfront seems to have gone down the plug hole.
Yep.
Where's the money coming from to regenerate St Helier and fulfil the dreams of these master plans?
Well, this is the interesting part of the argument. I've recently had a number of meetings with individual owners of large tracts of land. There's a body of work that has to be done in order to flesh out the finer details of the Northtown Master Plan, which did the higher level stuff to a good degree. But it's only by getting large landowners together that we're going to actually find ways to work together, which don't necessarily require to be funded through the states. So it's the working together aspect that we've never really done before, and I think that's going to be an issue on which I either succeed or fail.
Well, I wish you well on that, because you were referring us again as part of the discussions about the H1 housing schemes or H2 housing schemes, I think, as well, where developers are lined up and but they're not coming forward and developing houses. Why is that?
No, the reason that they're ostensibly not coming forward and designing houses, that's not particularly true. At the moment, we've got around about 1,500 permitted applications for residential accommodation. Around about 1,000 are owned by one particular developer, and they're not being built at the moment, not because they're not being given permission. They have been, but they're not being built because market conditions have changed, and there has been a longer recession than we thought. And some of the buildings that were being built were obviously of a speculative nature, and I think we've got to a price maximum, and people are suddenly looking around saying, well, do I really want this kind of expensive millstone around my neck, or should I be wanting to just hold back and maybe rent for a little bit longer before I take the plunge to purchase a home?
This whole green countryside, urban regeneration argument, is it realistic? I mean, are cows really more important than human beings when it comes to space?
I think both are important, and I think it's the quality of life issues that I think is the most important issue. We can all obviously live in dense cities, but where do people go on holiday? They normally take their holidays outside of the built-up areas to less built-up areas. So I think the two are important. They're obviously more vitally important if you can have both in the same place, which we're lucky enough to have.
Do the residents of St John, perhaps, and St Mary's take their holidays in St Helier, do you think?
Oh, no, I take my holidays at Green Island, so there you go. I'm a case in point.
The mention at the very end of the discussion today, there was just a reference to international obligations. Now, in the island plan, there's reference to hundreds of international obligations and treaties which apply to Jersey, and that supposedly your department considers. If you go to the planning office, there's virtually evidence. Ramsar gets a mention, but virtually nothing else.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair comment, and I think for a long time the states as a whole have probably signed treaties and got into international agreements without actually realising the level of involvement that the signing of these documents brings. I think in some instances it probably goes further than that, and we've completely misunderstood the financial implications for actually signing these treaties. In my view, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, and I'll do whatever I can to either pull back on those signings, or indeed to move in the other direction to see if we can drum up some financial support in order to put our money where our mouth is.
Well, to embrace them would be rather more my ambition, but I know you were talking also about the IT facility and how you're going to extend the information which is available online, so people can, from the comfort of their armchair, can see what's going on. Wouldn't that be the sort of thing you could put online, all the treaties
well, certainly I think they are online, but I'd have to double check on that. But there's a big difference between a policy being online with certain commitments and those commitments having been funded in order to deliver them sensibly. And it's a long process in some instances, trying to actually argue your corner and to suggest perhaps that the priorities that you place on these signings is actually higher than other priorities for putting money into the health service or education or some other area.
There are all sorts of issues discussed. Future fees increases from the planning process, which will be frightening to a lot of people. Is that really going to happen?
Well, yeah, I think all departments have got to, at regular intervals, take a proactive view as to whether or not they can only function with monies coming from the centre, or whether or not they can actually levy enough funds through the provision of quality services that their departments are there for. So I think the key issue is not just one where we're looking at whether or not fees should go up. It's whether or not in any fee rises the quality of the services justify the fee charge.
There was also a rather intriguing discussion going on about the fact that perhaps as the planning department you should be leading lots of the discussions about future proposals for Jersey on all sorts of areas. Yet the other hand, the discussion also was that you're going to outsource things and close down your various functions and give it to agencies. So on the one hand wanting more power and on the other hand trying to give it away.
No, that's not quite fair. I mean, I think generally, what I said, and it's certainly a current area that's exercising the minds of more than one politician in terms of government review, is the three functions that apply in most government organisations. And that's the regulatory function, the operational function, and the strategy setting function. Current thought at the moment is that perhaps the state should be reorganised in order to separate out those functions within a department as far as possible, and I think I would endorse that approach. That said, a number of the difficulties that we have at the moment within the department are probably based on the fact that some of these functions are resident in other departments who have combined poacher and gamekeeper role, which is wrong.
There were many other issues which were discussed, but I'm afraid our time's up today, but perhaps at a future date we shall come back.
Yeah, certainly.
Most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.